All right, it seems we are recording, so welcome to today's meeting about understanding the new online advice channel dashboard. There are 10 of you participating, 15 did register, so that does mean we've got a pretty high number of you focusing on this, and so Sunitha has put in a request as typical if you can either stay in auto in or keep a close eye on the phones to see if there are calls waiting in the queue, and so you can respond to that. Again, I am recording it, so if you do have to miss any of it, you can always go back onto the Launch and Beyond site after this is recorded. I will send it off to get posted, and so I would anticipate it would be posted by the end of today, or if not, tomorrow at some point. So, all right. So I did put a piece here on my desktop here, and I hope you can see it. But I attended another webinar actually by Change Leaders, and I thought there was an interesting piece there that basically triggered in my mind, you know, if we have a greater understanding of the business, it leads to better performance, and better performance leads to an improved competitive advantage. So I think that's all what all of us want, and so I'm hoping that the dashboard is that information piece that helps all of you have a greater understanding of the business. Another fun thing that they said in the webinar I attended was BLUF, and BLUF in their world stands for bottom line up front. So, you know, this session is all about that. It's about, here's the bottom line up front, so all of you have a clear understanding of how our business is doing, and so that, you know, the mystery is removed if there was mystery, and that we all have the same information going forward as we run our shared practice. Today, if you have a question, I saw an interesting method of using the instant messaging within a web meeting. So if you have a question, start your IM text with a Q. So as an example, I went Q, you know, so what does ... mean? But if you have an insight that you want to share, it's not a question, but something like you have an aha moment as we're going through the dashboard, start your IM with an I. And that way we'll go, oh, you know, Jackie has an insight. Jackie, yes, you can view the dashboard elsewhere. I did send it with the email invitation, so it's a PDF document that was within the invitation. So if some of you are struggling to see my desktop, within the invitation there was a PDF document, and that's the dashboard comes to you in the form of a PDF. So I think let's get to the dashboard. So I'm going to share my desktop. And can someone confirm verbally if you can see it and if you can see it well? Because now I can't see the message box on the side.
Surprisingly enough, Michelle, it's Jackie. I can see that.
Yay! Jackie can see it. Can the rest of you, or can, you know, David, are you seeing it, or Shane?
It's Jackie Branson. Oh yeah, I can see it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right, so here we go. This is the dashboard, hot off the presses. So it is available to you in a PDF, and it's a navigable PDF, so you can actually move through the tabs and the buttons. So the first tab at the top is about the place to work. So, you know, many times we heard all of you say that being busy, being active is what makes this a fun role. So this is a bit about the activity. And so at the top, every month you'll see a cumulative value of the total visitors that we've had to the site. Now, I want to remind you that this is for the period of November, and in the future you will be able to go see future months, but we don't have data for December yet because it will only be updated monthly. But we don't have data going backwards because we decided to start with when the online advice experience was launched. So this is for actually the period of November 13th to November 30th. So not a full month, not even half a month, but so for the period of time that the tool, since the tool was launched. So we've got on our first button the segmentation, which if you hover over the colored content, you'll see data that appears. So you can see that in this, it does indicate that we had 405. So those would be, we had a total number of visitors of 5,000. However, those people who created profiles are the where we can start identifying if they were mass market or mass affluent, right? I mean, if they just click on the first page, which is what this total number of visitors is, if they actually came to the site, whether or not they went further through, we can't tell. But we can tell once they complete step 2 and they've given us the total number of assets they have, investable assets already. So about 78% is mass market. It's clients who have less than $100,000 of investable assets. 22% thereabout did indicate assets that reflected they would be a mass affluent type client. So it means 114 people, when they reached the end of step 2, they would have had that pop up with Elaine Sadler saying, it seems your needs are more complex. Would you like to meet with a financial advisor? So we would have had 114 people who would have experienced that. And then there's a tiny, tiny little sliver here. So 2 people, so less than 0.5%. But nonetheless, we did have 2 people go in and enter high net worth information. Now, we have to recognize that we can only rely on the information that the users put in there. So whether they're putting in fake information and having fun with it or not, we really can't tell. But what we do know is that there are 2 people in there, and I think for the most part, they were real profiles. Just on the subject of fake profiles, from November 13th to December 15th, I was able to see, for example, any fake profiles that were created internally, where an E number and a transit number were attached. And there were only 9 of them. So there's not a significant, it's not rampant, but there have been a few, but it's less than 0.5% of the total number of profiles that were created with an E number and a transit number attached to them. So that's good. So that kind of shares with us, where are we getting the distribution of our customers? The source, unfortunately, the data here is maybe not all that conclusive for the first month, and let me share a bit why. But this dark blue shows that we had 1,884 clicks onto our site from the ATB.com site. So that's where they're on ATB.com and they clicked at the top right with ATB online advice, so the new button that we have there. So a good number of people are going there, so that's good news. Social media would be where there's been a tiny bit of sharing on social media with a link, and so if someone clicked on a link through social media, that's how many we had in the month of November, and that's an area that Dan Smith and the marketing team will continue to explore and review, what type of activity are we getting from social media, and is it worthwhile, a worthwhile way of sharing the news out there that we exist. This sliver here, so between November 13th and November 30th, there were 177 profiles created internally again, so that's where that E number and transit number is attached, so quite a large number of them. I can tell you, though, that in that period, about half of them are, the email address used was an ATB.com address. So for sure, at least half of them, they were ATB associates creating their own profile. And in fact, some of them were you, because I did see some of your email addresses in there. And the other half, hard to tell. I mean, I did see as well, and our great partnership committee had been sending recognitions to each of those ATB associates, but there were some where it became obvious by their Hotmail address, right? If there was a name, there was one associate, I remember her name was Harmony, and it was something Harmonistical, I think, at hotmail.com. So obviously Harmony, I can't remember her last name, used her personal email address as well. So I'd say for the first month, a lot of this data we can really look at it as it's kind of the family and friends month, as Rita said. To put some context into that, on our first day, so we have total number of visitors at 5,026. On our first day, we had 1,366 visitors, and we know that at least 1,200 of those were by clicking on Dave Mowatt's email link, and that falls in this other category. So you can see how other has over, like, approaching 2,800 visitors, and so you know, next month of December, we should see the other be a lot less. So other would include when people are typing in the link directly, or they're typing in advice.atv.com in their web browser, or they clicked on a link such as the one that Dave Mowat sent. So yeah, of that 2,787, 1,366 were visitors on the first day. As well, on the first day, we did have a lot of bulk chats and a lot of plans started, and so some of this data is a bit of a reflection of, you know, Dave Mowat getting the message out. So November, we should start to see more normalized activity, and then, of course, moving into January and February again. Visitor type, this helps us see how many go to the site once versus how many come back to the site. So, you know, about 68% of our visitors have come only once and not returned, again in that 2-week period, right, the November 13th to November 30th, versus about 1,600 or 32% came back a second time. So, you know, perhaps they created their profile in Branch and then they went home to finish their profile, as an example. So that gives us an idea of the type of activity that we're seeing within the plan. What's really interesting is on the next tab, and I think the next tab again is a bit indicative of it being the first month and the first day really skewing the activity. So you can see here that goals, if we hover over it, 1,543 people enter their goals and didn't proceed beyond that step. Okay, so we then had 907 people create, like, go to the end, I guess, of step 2 within the profile. So now we can see, you know, where people are dropping off. And I think, again, it was that first day where perhaps a lot of ATV associates logged in, kind of checked it out and went, ooh, okay, this is going to take me a little while, maybe I'll come back. And so they dropped off after the first step. So I'm hoping, and we'll see when the November data comes out, if this might normalize a little bit and not see as large a drop rate after the first step. But if we do, then it's an important piece of information for our business, and it's that type of information that the Client Experience Committee is really starting to explore with making sure that, you know, if there's that many dropouts, is there something we can do in step 1 that would really create that desire for users to move to the next step. So it's important information for sure. So yeah, so then after having completed step 2, so again, this might be a bit of a reflection of, we've got a number of ATV associates creating their profiles in Branch and then getting stopped and maybe not going home to continue, or same thing, starting with the customer, sending them off. So we had 907 complete the step 2, but then drops to 300 people going into step 3 and beyond. This is maybe a place where I can share. There have been a few questions in the last few days around how do our customers get surveys. So our customers, or the users of online advice, get a survey once they have completed step 3 in the experience. So, you know, we absolutely have to get them to the end of step 2 because that's where we collect their email address, right? So there's no way we could survey someone after step 1. So now we've got their email address after step 2. It's only at the end of step 3 that we send out a survey, and it's because we want them to go a little deeper into the experience. And it, you know, it doesn't mean that they've exited out at step 3. It just means they at least got to that step. We send them a survey. I know there was a question the other day that asked, well, what if like I've put in an advice call log? Is that what triggers the survey? No, it's not your advice call log that triggers the survey. It's the individual moving through their online advice experience past step 3 that triggers the survey. And again, your advice call log then is how we link that survey back to you. So I know Trevor, for example, earlier today said, hey, one of the people that I think should have got a survey, I'm not sure they did. And so he gave me that person's email address, and I was able to confirm that, yes, that person had been sent a survey, and I can tell whether or not they looked at it and whether or not they completed it. So we did have, and on the next page we'll share how many surveys went out and how many survey responses we got. So that's kind of helping you understand this. So, you know, you can see that we would have had 300 surveys sent out during that period of time for sure, because they reached step 3. So this is where the dropout rate starts to reduce, right? Now they're fully invested, they're getting their strategy, so we had a little bit of dropping out, not a lot. Same thing with the solution, about 17 dropped out at that point from the prior step, but we had 252 that made it to the end of step 6. So really it's telling us in that time period, 252 plans were completed. Of that 252, 30 plans were completed on day 1. So pretty good. I mean, day 1 was a busy day with a lot of visitors, but not a lot of going through the entire process. But the rest of the month started saying, okay, we're getting, you know, more a natural usage of the experience. And so we can see that, you know, 220 plans were created and completed after day 1. Portal is where they go in and see their own personal information, confirm it's correct, etc. So that's how many people made it to that step. And then lastly, the action menu. We had 63 users take action with the action menu. So yeah, we've got a good piece of data here, and understanding, maybe seeing, you know, maybe some people are just curious about the planning and they don't necessarily need to action, and that's okay. Couple more pieces on this page, and then we'll stop for Q&A and chat. So this is the goal types. So this tells us, you know, what types of goals are our users entering in. And I don't think it comes as any surprise to us. The most significant goal type used or checked with is retirement. So there were 410 users who created a retirement profile. And it looks like the second largest is the debt pay down at 191. So, you know, about half of, well, not half, yeah, half of the 400 are now saying they also want to understand debt. Education was the least at 58, and the special purchase is at 161. So gives us an idea of, you know, where are our customers interested in. I would anticipate, you know, in the January, February months, you would see a lot more focus on retirement, of course, right? So those are your goal types. And then the last is where we can really see, you know, those 62 people who, I think it was 62 under the progress tab, who actioned, 63, sorry, who actioned. These are the types of actions they got. And there's one little unusual piece here, and that's that mass market maintenance piece. And we're wondering if in November we did have that glitch where we had repeat tasks sent on maintenance issues. So I don't know, that one's still a tricky, so we'll have to observe that for the December data to see if that's normalized or what, and explore what's happening in the data there. But the fun stuff is, though, that we did get 39 new accounts opened through online advice for mass market, and we had 3 mass affluent. So, you know, 42 new accounts in all in a 2-week period. So that's really great activity, especially when we haven't done any real marketing of the experience. So again, as you hover through each of them, you can see, you know, what type of activity. So we've got pack changes. Now, this doesn't indicate whether it's a pack increase or a pack decrease or a pack start, but we've got pack activity going in there, and that's maybe where in the future we can see about getting a little more granular if it's possible in that area. The other fun thing too is we've had 17 transfer in requests, 2 of them being mass affluent, so FA segment customers. So Lots of good positive, like new accounts, contributions, packs, transfers in. Withdrawals, yep, we had a few, but we only had 6. So, that's really great news. And then, maybe their plan indicated they should change their holdings. So we did have a few doing that. The one thing I'm noticing, and maybe something we can adjust for the future dashboards, I believe these 2 columns, the debt transactions and the referrals to RFS, I would think will always mirror each other, right? If a user asks for a debt transaction, we would refer to retail. So we may not need both of those. And lastly, 1 referral to FA, and that's where a customer in that 2-week period or a user or visitor would have clicked on that button saying, yes, I do want to connect with an FA. So that's what that's about. So that's kind of the section 1, the place to work portion of the dashboard. So I'm just going to stop sharing my desktop for a moment and go back to Link and kind of open it for questions. At the same time, share a new poll. So you can answer the poll, or you can put a question or insights, perhaps, as we go along in the IM portion. Oh, I guess I wanted to put this poll before I started, to be honest, but I'll give a few seconds for this poll. I forgot. I had 2 polls I wanted to launch before I started. All right. So all of you are responding. I'm going to close the poll that you chose to attend this meeting because you were interested in learning more. You understood what was available in the dashboard, but you wanted to learn more. So great. Let's go on to the next poll, which is the one I really want. So this one here is, when you look at the amount of activity, for the, I have a typo in there, period of November 13th to November 30th, does it surprise you? Are you extremely surprised, somewhat surprised? It's about what you expected, maybe less than what you expected, or maybe it's way less. So I'm curious to see what the pulse is out there. So far I have 7 responses, and there are 15, well, I guess 14 participants in the call, because I don't count. So I'm looking for 3 more responses, and I know Jackie can't, so maybe 2 more responses before I close the poll. So I'll close the poll in a few seconds here. All right, let's close it. So, there were 2 of you that say it is about what you expected, and 9 of you say it's somewhat less than you expected. So actually I'm a little surprised because, I think that overall, given that we did not market this at all during those first few weeks because we really wanted it to be a soft launch, as leaders, we're quite pleased with the activity. We think that it's quite strong in terms of the online, the number of transactions and transfers in and et cetera that were requested. So, but hey, I know that all of you were really, really looking forward to this and were anticipating a lot of activity. So I look forward to seeing December activity to see, that's where we can see that that would be a real month of activity and how much we get there. So maybe we'll have to have another poll come January to see what our thoughts are on that. So, all right. The instant messaging box is quiet. Are there any questions, insights, comments before I move on to the next tab? And certainly you're welcome to unmute to ask your questions or make your comments as well. It does not have to be through the IM box.
Hey, Michelle, it's Rita.
Oh, hi, Rita.
I'm sneaking in because Denise is my chauffeur right now, so she's got the call on, so I've been listening. And, yeah, the only thing I would add is I shared this dashboard with the executive yesterday.
Oh, great.
And I have to say, they are so impressed with the first few weeks. And our vendor who helped us create this basically said what they're seeing for time on the site, for progress through the site, for drop-off, for visitors returning. That's almost best in class. It's almost some of the strongest things they've ever seen for a website launch. And so, I think, while it might not be what people expect, all of you should be really proud of where we're at, because it really is boding extremely well for where we're headed. So I know, none of us have done this before, so it's somewhat like, what should I expect? I don't know. But I have to say, what we're seeing, everybody at the executive level and at the vendor level are like over the moon happy with where we're at right now.
Wow, thank you, Rita. I didn't know you were in the call. I wasn't expecting, but that is wonderful, wonderful news to share, and thank you for taking time while you're driving to listen in and to give that great piece of news. Yeah, like I said, I think that maybe we as advisors were hoping for it to be, hugely, hugely active, but it's great to hear that for general industry launches that these are great, great results. Thank you. Yeah, and Tracy, your comment is everyone understanding question is about the tool and not our activity. So absolutely, some of you are maybe feeling you're not getting a lot of activity requests. And so a lot of these are automated, right? So it just goes to show that we can build our business, while clients are navigating through the entire experience on their own. And we know that many, and our next tab will show how many bold chat requests we've had, how many phone calls we've had, etc. But this shows that we can get those deposits and packs and all those things where clients are essentially navigating through the experience on their own. So yeah, exactly. It's just for the tool. So any other comments or questions before I move on to the next piece? All right.
Hi, Michelle, it's Anton.
Oh, hi, Anton.
I've got a question for you just on the progress tab. I'm not sure I understand that correctly. If I add up all of the different stages, right? So the goals, the current, the profile, should that add up to that 5026 we've got on top? Like, is that the total amount of people that was on the site?
Just hold on. I'll go back to that in a moment. Why don't we're done with the poll. I'll share my desktop again. And I'm sure some of the questions, this dashboard's new to me too. Putting in the information, trying to figure it out. So progress tab. Not necessarily, Anton, because the goals tab would be where someone would have started entering their goals. So there are perhaps a number of visitors that landed on our page, saw it, went, interesting, but didn't press the continue button.
Okay.
Right, so this is where those, there were 1,543 people who physically started entering goals, which means, yeah, there's another 3,500 who maybe didn't proceed to that step. And, I can see how on day one a lot of activity might have been, retail associates going, ooh, interesting, I might come back to that, or, yeah. I know Coco asked the question, so I'm going to have to flip back there. Coco. Yeah, thanks, Tracy. You pasted back to the bottom. The PDF that you have sent to us, it will automatically update for us, or do we go to the SharePoint site to get update results? Great question, Coco. No, the PDF does not automatically update. So I will be sending a new PDF, or posting a new PDF actually to the SharePoint site every month. So what I'll do, in the first month is for sure, like January, for example, I will target to have it done by about the 10th of every month. So, if after the 10th you want to go to the SharePoint site to see if a new update is there, absolutely do. But I will tell you January will not be in by the 10th because I'm still on holidays on that point. I'm taking a January holiday. So my goal is to get it up and posted by the 17th at the latest, potentially the 16th. So, but yeah, otherwise you'll have to go in and then, so that new PDF then Coco would then have November and December data, and as the data builds, you'll be able to go to prior months to go and compare and take a look. Yeah, you're welcome, Coco. All right, so let's move on to the next tab. So the next tab is the Loved by Albertans. So in the top you can see survey responses. So we had 30 survey responses in that. It's actually not even a 2-week period, to be honest, because the survey only got launched on November 22nd. So it's really just 8 days worth of surveys, and there were 300 surveys sent in that period. So we had about a 10% response rate, and right now I'm continuing to take a look again with the Client Experience Committee at our survey responses, and we're getting about an 11 to 12% response rate. So when someone gets an invitation, about 11 to 12% of those receiving invitations are responding to the survey. So it's actually a pretty good response rate. So those are the survey responses we received in that 8-day period, and the results they're sharing with us is overall their client experience rating. Are they likely to continue to use and likely to recommend? So if we hover over the blue bar, we can see that 4.1 out of 5, so more than 80% are saying, yes, absolutely, I will continue to use. So some great responses there. And then how likely are they to recommend? Again, it's on a scale of 10. About 7.4 are saying they are likely to recommend ATBIS to family and friends. So I've got some good, responses amongst those 30. The value of advice is, the question is, how would you rate the quality of advice you received during your recent experience? And so there are two. There's the one that's supported by advisor and unsupported by advisor. And so if you went to look at, in the SharePoint site, your production bonus tracking sheet, you'll see in the second tab that there were, I believe, 6 of these 30 surveys that we were able to connect to advisors. And so 4 of them, I think, were for David. I'm hearing a lot of beeping. So they're supported by advisor. What I did is I linked, and we found that on average, they scored 3.7. So it's like, ooh, that's good. That's what we're looking for, is, that 3.7 or higher. Unsupported, though, where they're not speaking with one of our advisors, we're getting a bit of a lower rating, at least in those 30 survey responses that we got in that 8-day period. So it'd be interesting to continue to observe that as we move into the upcoming months. I'm just going to check to see. There are 30 responses. It says 6. Where do you see? Yeah, 30 survey responses. So the clarification there, Tracy, is there were 30 survey responses for the entire experience. And in the production bonus, it's only 6 of those 30 can be linked to a particular advisor. So again, the way we do that is when we get those survey responses, we can see the email address of that individual who responded to that survey. When you put your advice logs, I get an advice call log report monthly, and I requested that the email address be part of that column, and so I can link those 2 email addresses together. And so of those 30, only 6 I could link to a particular call log. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those clients did not, there weren't more that potentially chatted with an advisor, but there were only 6 call logs that could be attached to that. I hope that clarifies. Yeah. All right. So, and then the last piece is contact types, so just to see the kind of activity. So in that period of time, November 13th to November 30th, there were 1,450 calls, through the Avaya phones coming in through the general queue. So about 80% of all contacts that were initiated by clients or users, and then 370 clicks. And again, on the first day, we had 57 bold chat clicks. Oh, say that fast 5 times. So it gives you a sense of where are we getting our activity, and it'll be fun to observe again in the next months. Is that yellow pie growing or shrinking, or how are our clients telling us that they want to connect with us? So that's the Loved by Albertans tab. So I'm again going to stop sharing and give you an opportunity for questions, insights, and launch another poll. So this poll is asking the ratings that users are giving us for the overall experience and value of advice is. Is it A, much higher than you would have anticipated, somewhat higher, about what you anticipated, lower, or much lower? Just trying to get a sense of what you were perhaps anticipating or hoping to get as responses to the experience. So we have about 5 people responding so far out of 14. I'll give you a few more moments. Nine, 10, all right. I'll give another 5 seconds to put in your vote. All right, I'm guessing a few of you might have gone to grab a call, which is awesome. So I'm going to close the poll. We have 11 responses, and hopefully you can see this. I've shown that there were 2 of you that are saying somewhat higher than you would have anticipated. 8 of you saying, it's about what you expected, and 1 is saying, lower than you would have expected. So I think we're kind of all gravitating to that, about what you expected for the most part. So, I think we're for an experience that is just new out of the gates, and we had maybe some time delays because we're trying to figure out how to do things, or maybe little things in the tool that needed to be repaired as we went along. Some pretty good survey responses. And so as we work out, our processes and maybe, do some enhancements to the tool, we can see opportunity to get a higher score. So I'm really excited about these scores. I think it's really great. So, all right. Any questions before we move on to the next or the last tab of the dashboard? No, all right, then I'll share my desktop again. And it says it's connecting, so maybe it's taking a few moments. Can someone maybe tell me verbally if you can see it? Because it's still saying connecting for me.
Not yet.
Not yet. All right, then I'll wait patiently with all of you. It says it's sharing for me. Do you see it now, David?
I can see it.
I do.
All right. So what this is telling us now is more of the financials side of things. So at the top, you've got 2 pieces of data. You've got contribution, and you've got year-to-date referrals to all of our partners, okay? So what does contribution mean? Well, contribution means, as a total for this segment, what did we see in net revenue in a very general category or general sense for this line of business? So the $284,816 is essentially calculated, and I'll share. I kind of typed it on a document here. It's calculated as follows. So basically it's taking the mutual fund revenues. So what we do is we look at what are the assets under management for the month, and we multiply that by 0.1, which is our trail, the trail or earnings that we get on those total assets. Now, we didn't include the fee revenue in this formula. So, this formula is just a general estimate and calculation of what our contribution margin would look like. We also then need a cost estimate, right? So we estimate, like, by the time all the advisor costs, so that would be your advisor, your salaries, production bonuses that you would earn in a year, the costs to submit your tax components to the CRA, all of the costs attributed to having an advisor staffed is about $100,000. And then what we did is we divided by the 12 months because we're looking for the contribution margin for the month. And then we multiply it by the number of advisors that we have on the payroll in that particular month. So then the contribution margin is essentially equal to the revenue from the mutual fund base, from the assets under management, minus that cost. Now the thing to note is also that contribution is also before costs of operations. So I put IOG, gosh, I guess I should update my language. It's the ASC now, and compliance. So, you know, over time we'll be able to share more information with you on that, like what do those costs look like. But right now, it's basically looking at, you know, are the assets that we have under management, you know, covering the cost, for example, for having our, for a team staffed supporting those assets. So we haven't looked at the operations in IOG. And we have a commented question. Do we have a number for that right now? And David, you're talking about the IOG and compliance costs? Yes, and the total margin of contribution. I don't have it in those specifics, and that's something that I need to continue to explore and perhaps share out. But I know that it's a significant cost actually, and it probably brings us into a negative contribution at this time. But it's something we continue to work on, and I know it's something that the ASC and compliance have done a lot of work as well in reducing the costs that they would attribute back to each of the segments, right? So I absolutely will want to share that out with you, but I don't have the specifics of that to share right now. But this is just a general calculation that we're going to look at in terms of, you know, advisor costs. Are we basically paying for our salaries? Are we and contributing to the business? And then after that, we'll have to attribute all the other business costs. That's what contribution is. So it's awesome to see it's a positive number, and we'll be able to see over the months if that increases, because we do have it on a per account basis as well that I'll show you in a few tabs. The year-to-date referrals is actually just an addition of how many referrals we sent to FAs and how many referrals we sent to our retail partners in that period of time. So we sent 86 in a period of 2 weeks essentially. So some really, really great referral activity there. In the graphic portion, we've got NAG, which stands for net asset growth versus plan. So the purple bar is showing that in November, we grew by a net amount of 1.7 million essentially, and the data gathered and removed is in the margin below. That data should be familiar to you because it's also available in your production bonus summary document that's available in SharePoint. And then this is compared to the plan. Now, I want to stress that plan is not your target for production bonus. It's the plan that we established within our budget for finance. How much did we tell them we expected to grow the assets? So just to, again, confirm, you know, it's basically saying the plan here was 4.4 million for November and 4.4 million for December, yet your production bonus target for that November 15th to December 15th was essentially 4.5 million, right? So it's half of plan is what we set up for your production bonus period. And then, you know, we can see what the plan is for the upcoming months and where we want to see our bar growing towards. Again, the plan there is showing about 8.9 million, let's say, per month for January, February, March, versus your production bonus target for those 3 months is 26 million, which is equal to about 8.66 million per month. So again, we've set your target below what we established at with finance for the plan. Other features available is you can click on these buttons to see, you know, what was the net asset growth last year? What was the net asset growth for the last 3-year average? So we can kind of see where we are going to compare according to the, last year and the 3-year average as we move forward. So hopefully we will start seeing again in this graph the same type of data that we were seeing earlier in the fiscal year, where we were exceeding 3-year averages and last year's growth numbers as well. So this data will be fun to see as we get more data within the tool. Opportunity, we've got showing how many debts were revealed in the plan. So this is step 2 in the experience. So they're showing us that there's about $68 million worth of debts that the users entered. And so this shows a really great deal of opportunity for us to dig deep in those conversations with our clients to perhaps seek opportunities to send to our partners. So tons and tons of opportunities there to refer over to our partners. And then as well, the assets, there's, approaching $55 million worth of assets just in those first 2 weeks that were revealed through this. And, step 2 doesn't identify whether those assets are invested with us or with other financial institutions. But again, those are where you can dig deeper in your conversations as you're talking with those customers to learn, where are those assets, and maybe we can get them to transfer them in. So this is will be fun to see these numbers grow over time as well. Accounts, this is about the business today, and so we can see that the average balance per account in the mass market or in our advice channel is, just over $20,000 is the average balance. So it's nice to see that average balance grow over time. So we'll see if that's where the bars will trend in the upcoming months. And this dot is basically telling us how many accounts we have. So in November, there were 30,557 accounts within our segment. This is where I was indicating the contribution margin per account. So it's basically calculating, and again, I think there has to be rounding in there. I'll have to explore that a little further because I kind of did the math manually and it's not 100% bang on, but we'll be able to see this contribution margin, I'm hoping, growing as we go over the months, so that we're going to earn more per account as we start working with more and more customers, our clients, through online advice. This is looking a little empty right now, but basically we'll start seeing a line graph develop itself. So we sent 68 referrals to financial advisors, and the data that I use for that is when you use the Outlook form to send a referral to FAs. So any referral that you sent, whether it's through conversations you had or through the prospecting queue, do use the Outlook form to send those referrals to FAs, because that's how I count how many referrals we sent their way. So there were 68 Outlook forms used in that period of time. Awesome. That should be great data to share with our partners as we move forward. The reassigned shows us, I count a total number of reassigned accounts, so 171 accounts for the month of November. Now I have to say that's the entire month, for a total value of about $8.2 million. And since reassignment, it's easy for us to see how much those advisors grew those assets. So I'll continue to see, build on the growth of those assets. So, a fair amount of assets sent over to our FA partners in the month of November. And lastly, RFS tab is, again, how many referrals we sent to retail. So again, when you're using the Outlook form and it's to a retail partner, I'm counting those. So, and I'm quite confident you're all using that. So in that very short period of time, that's how many referrals we sent to our retail partners using the Outlook form. So I've pretty well reached the end of our dashboard. So I'm going to stop sharing the dashboard and open up the floor to questions, comments, and the final poll. I can't remember now. Was it number 5 I did last time, or 6? There we go. I have 2 more poll questions. So The information in the dashboard is it extremely interesting and will help us run our shared practice, someone interesting and could help us run our shared practice, or not of great value to running the practice? So if you have opportunities, so far I have 6 responses, still 15 participants. All right, I've got 10 responses so far, so maybe 11. I'll give another moment for the last few, and then I'll close the poll. I think I only had 11 responses on the last one, so. All right, I'll close it and share. And I'm thrilled to see that 90% of you see this as extremely interesting and helpful to run the shared practice. And one of you is somewhat interesting. So, like, phew, glad there aren't any in the last section. So, that, you know, at the same time, this is the first dashboard. And so I was talking with Sean Weber, who really is a genius when it comes to collecting and sharing out data. And, you know, we thought, you know, how much of this can we automate? I'll be honest, a lot of this was manual information coming from multiple sources, and I'm, you know, entering this data manually into a spreadsheet. So we thought we're going to run with this in the current format for a few months.
Securities, this is David speaking. How may I help you? David,
can you mute? Please mute. Thank you.
Okay.
So, if someone send a quick little OCS to say he needs to mute his, or maybe can I mute him?
Certainly. Okay.
Mute. There we go. I can do it. Awesome. So we'll see about automating, but I didn't want to automate until I get maybe more feedback from you to hear, you know, if there may be some information pieces you'd be interested in seeing that perhaps are not included in this. Now, I know there's a lot more information we can share that might fit outside of the dashboard, and hopefully you're starting to receive some of that from Sunitha and Melanie with regards to some heat map information, and then our, you know, our production bonus is in a separate document. But you know, I do value your feedback so that once we really get a good, firm understanding of the information that we need, then we can start finding ways to create this in a more automated way that maybe is available more frequently than monthly as well. All right, so I'm going to watch one last poll, and still, please, if any of you have questions, shoot away. So the last question is, this live meeting has been very helpful in creating a greater understanding of the business. And I have 10 responses, and we know Dave stepped out, so I'm perhaps there at my limit. So I'll just close the poll and share the results. So 70% of you have indicated it was somewhat helpful, and 3 or 30% have indicated it was extremely helpful. So I'm glad to see that it's helpful or somewhat helpful to extremely helpful. Again, not a lot of questions, so we still have 4 minutes. I'm here to answer questions, and it could be on this dashboard or any other information that you feel would be valuable and you had perhaps hoped would be on the dashboard. It could be a great time to share that feedback now. Or maybe you're all like David and you're on calls at the moment. I see Coco's typing a question. Certainly you can unmute if you wish as well. Joe's in a call. And Coco, thank you. She shares that she likes the way that it looks and it's broken down. So that's good positive feedback. I also interested in the constructive feedback. If any of you, you know, the more, what's the word I'm looking critical thinkers, maybe. You certainly don't have to bring them up now, but what I would do is I invite you, as you play around in the dashboard a little bit more, I invite you to send me an email and say, well, Michelle, I like this, but I would have, is there a way we can get this piece of information in there that you think would be valuable for running your practice? So, send me an email anytime to make suggestions as to what could be included as part of this dashboard.
I was wondering, Michelle, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, when you were talking about the figures earlier about the targets on what we're looking to get for the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just wondering, is that also going to be broken down a little bit more in the next dashboard?
Well, let me share my desktop just to be clear. And so you're saying the figures in terms of net asset growth that we're hoping to target, is that the piece?
Yeah.
So these pieces, so January, February, March, what we were expecting in terms of net asset growth. When you say broken down, are you saying what we would expect in sales versus, or assets removed versus assets gathered to get to that 8.8? It's actually in the SharePoint document that's where your production bonus information is. I did include the finance targets in there. So you should be able to see in there what we've targeted to have as, money coming in versus money leaving to arrive at that net asset growth total. So it should be in that document.
Okay, in the growing assets tab?
Yes.
Okay.
And Sunitha, Melanie, and I met just yesterday, I think it was, to start creating our budget for the next fiscal year. So starting April onwards, what do we anticipate we'll see as net asset growth with the gathered and removed portions? So we'll make sure that in our next production bonus target documentation that would be shared with you as well.
Okay.
More questions?
I wonder also, there may be some people, I find that the Outlook form that we are sending is very, very easy to use. Like, it's pretty straightforward, same as what we used to use for if we needed to unlock an account for a trade or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if, because those are part of our production bonuses, are you giving people opportunity to tell our team leaders, in November I did this lead and I wrote it down, but I forgot to create an email for it? Should they then, just if there is anybody that hasn't said that, should they now create the email and then just advise the...
Just to clarify, Tracy, you mentioned it's a part of production bonus. Those are not part of production bonus?
No, sorry, not production bonus. I mean...
performance metrics.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
I would say no, don't create the Outlook form, because if you somehow shared that referral with a PB or an FA in the past, creating that Outlook form now would send them a message and kind of go, I thought I did this already. So, if there are some that you did not send, keep that documentation, and your leaders will be able to, consider that in their review of your performance at the end of the year. But, I would say definitely from this point going forward, do try to remain consistent in using that form to send your referrals, because it really is the best way that we can use to know for the business, right? Not just for you, but for the business, how many referrals we're sending.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it's 3:01. So what I'll do, it seems we don't have any other questions, but as again I mentioned, do all of you feel most welcome to send me an email with comments, questions, feedback, requests, anything relating to this or any piece of how we can, improve our practice. So thank you very much, everyone. Have an awesome, awesome day, and I won't be speaking to many of you between now and Christmas. So again, to all of you as well, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll be chatting in the new year. Bye, everyone.